Welcome to Motherhood. Whether you're 18 or 80, Dr. Christina Hibbert, clinical psychologist, author, and mother of 6, is here to help you through the ups and downs, the joys and frustrations, the new information from experts, and the stories of happiness and heartbreak from real moms. Remember, if you can, tell your mama to listen too.
And I'll make everything all right.
Here's Christy.
Welcome to Motherhood. I'm Dr. Christina Hibbert, here to help you overcome, to become, and to flourish in this ever-expanding experience we call motherhood. And we're talking to you out there who are moms of all ages and stages, but there's one topic that probably we can all agree might be on our minds as we move through these episodes each week, and that is aging. And have you ever thought about how much aging is a mental process versus just our bodies aging? And I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've also dealt with looking in the mirror and being shocked sometimes at, how much your body has aged. Today we're going to talk more about that mental aspect about, age is just a number and it's not something that defines us. So how do we break free of those preconceived ideas that we have about our age and what it means for us to be this age or that age? And how do we then continue to live the life we desire, no matter what age we are? And the great message of today's show is that you truly can start at any age. And we have a fabulous guest, Jane Weicker, here. I'm going to introduce her in a moment, and we'll be talking about this. So all of you get ready to learn about how to keep going in your life, no matter what age you are right now. So before we do that, I just want to thank you for joining us here and for visiting us on my website at drchristinahibbert.com, where you can find resources on the things we talk about. Also, visiting us on YouTube, where you can find our Motherhood TV shows. And today's episode is no exception. We have the video, so if you prefer to watch it that way, you're welcome to do that. And also for joining us on social media, especially in our Facebook group, Growing Through Motherhood. So if you haven't already, you can ask to be added to Growing Through Motherhood on Facebook, and we'd love to have you there. Pretty soon I'm going to start doing some live feeds with the Facebook Live feature, which will be really fun so that I can check in with you and maybe give you some things to think about and work on throughout the weeks, and it'll help us to stay in touch a little bit better. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about aging well, I guess you would say, aging not just gracefully, but happily. and how we can keep that mindset young. I've been thinking about this topic quite a bit. I've had a couple of experiences in the past few months, which I know several of you out there have heard about. Maybe I've mentioned on the show before. I went on a couple of different adventures. One was the retreat that I went on to Zion National Park, and it was a women's retreat, and we had women of all ages, from 20s up to their 60s, really. And we had a group of 10, and we were all from different places and all from different ages. And then just about a month ago, I returned from the UK, where, as many of you know, I spent a week at Oxford University studying literature. And we had an all-women group, 12 of us. And again, all different ages, all the way, really every age, and all over the world, really, people were joining us. And it was so fun to just see everybody at whatever age they were. We were all there for the same purpose, whether it was at Zion, seeking adventure, going ziplining, hiking, whatever it might be, or at Oxford, having this intellectual kind of environment where we were exploring and learning and then going out and exploring the beautiful Oxford. And to see that truly our age only holds us back if we let it. And it really is only in our mind. And I was also with my mother-in-law, who is 72 and very young and very active. And it was fun to be able to go and do that with her and to have her taking such good care of herself and wanting that kind of adventure and seeking it and being willing to give herself that permission to go for it. And it really has inspired me. So I can't tell you how excited I am to talk to Jane Weicker. Jane, welcome to Motherhood. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Christina.
It's such a pleasure. I really have been thinking a lot about this because of these experiences I've had. And then when I got your message about your new book and what the work that you're doing and just the life that you've lived, I wanted to share you with everybody. So I'm excited to get into that. Let me first tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we can start talking more. So just to let you know, Jane is an 80-year young And if you're watching the video, you won't believe it. Seriously, she looks wonderful. But she's an 80-year young, accomplished family counselor, a former teacher, and spiritual explorer. She is smart and passionate woman, and she's eager to share the fruits of her 46-year inner journey, which she does in her brand new book, her debut book, a memoir called Soul Selfish, The Awakening of a Good Girl. And you can find her book through Amazon.com, Soul Selfish. Type it in, look it up. And you can also find out more about it on her website at JaneWyker, WYKER.com. And it's about becoming aligned with your true self and creating that path of sustained happiness. And again, we can do that at any age, right, Jane?
We can do that at every age.
Every age. I love it. We can do that at every age. Okay, so let's just jump right in. Let's talk about this idea of age being just a number. And why do you think that our age, that number, holds people back?
Well, because the culture is the culture that sees aging in decline.
Mm.
And we hear that in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way we treat elders here is very different, for example, as the way that people are treated in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
For the Native American culture had such a high regard for elders. We're very much a youth culture.
Yes.
And so that is given to us in many, many undercurrents, both obvious and inobvious.
Mm-hmm.
And so we internalize that and we feel that, and therefore we react to that. And I believe that we really need to reverse that in order to live our lives full out by going to our internal self and having that be the guide rather than the culture.
I love that. I completely agree. And, I'm 41 right now, so I'm not where you are. I'm not as wise as you are yet. I'm looking forward to that though, because I look forward to more life experiences, but just turning 40 and all these people are already saying to me, oh, you're over the hill, you're 40. And I hate that. I hate that is the message that we get. And I keep saying, I'm really not that old, people. There's a lot. And even if I were, whatever age I was, it's about how I feel. I don't feel anything different. I just, I feel good. So it really is kind of an internal process. Like you said, it's about connecting with something internal and not going with those stereotypes or those norms that society kind of tells us we have to act this way or look this way when we're this age or that age.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, the way I look at it is now is the only time that we have right now. Whether we're 20, 40, 60, or 80, now is the only time that we have to make choices about our lives. So that the more that we can be in connection with our internal selves, the more we can make choices in tune with ourselves, the happier we're going to be. And the more that we are taking in messages that are alien to us or attempting to fit into structures that are alien to us, the more unhappy we're going to be. So it really is, I attribute my self-exploration as the giving me the ability to live as happily and creatively as I have been able to live.
Happily and creatively, because creativity, it really is all about being creative. And we've talked a little bit on the show about that before, that you don't have to be doing crafts to be creative. It's about creating yourself and creating the life you desire and putting creativity into your everyday, right? And that is part of feeling young and feeling happy, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Also, another thing is that as we live, we accumulate things that are difficult, experiences that are difficult, and feelings that are associated with those difficult situations. And unless we have a way of externalizing those feelings, we accumulate them. And if you accumulate feelings for 10 years, is one thing. If you accumulate feelings of negative feelings, pain, fears, self-doubts, anger, if you accumulate them for 30 years, that's a different set of circumstances. And if you accumulate them for 50 years, that's even a different. So unless we have a way of connecting within ourselves to what we're feeling and finding a way of expressing those feelings in safe ways to externalize them, we gradually lose touch with our authentic selves. And the way that I can explain that, to give you an analogy, is as if you have a very cloudy day. And all you can see is gray, but you know it's daytime because it's light out, but you have no experience of the sun at all. Well, that's how it is inside. It's if you have a soul deep inside yourself, and you have an accumulation of layers and layers of negative feelings, pains, angers, fears, rejections, self-doubts, and you don't have a way of externalizing them, you gradually have a gray cloud cover that doesn't allow the radiance of your soul to shine through. But once you find that way of externalizing, you see little cracks in the grayness, and you see little rays of sunshine, and little by little your radiance has a chance to shine because there isn't an interference of accumulated negative feelings and emotions.
Beautifully put. I love that metaphor. I've used that often for how it feels to be depressed. You feel like there's no light, but really it's there. It's just you can't see it, and you have to wait for the weather to change or work on changing the weather by moving yourself. And I love that that you've applied it in this way, and that we can have those cracks start to appear as we start to work on those things and feel those things. Now, I would say, and what do you think, Jane? I would say that is what makes us feel tired and old, is carrying all that around and not processing those things. Would you agree with that? Or what do you think?
Yes, I do. I do agree with that. I feel that it has great health ramifications.
Right.
That in many, many studies done on health and happiness, and that carrying around negative energy is going to have an effect not only on your mental state, emotional state, of depression, but it will also have a great effect upon your level of health and energy and vitality, and for your body to be really functioning at an optimal level. So that health and happiness are very much tied, and happiness is very much tied to how we manage our emotional life.
Yes. Very, very, very true. And I know we're going to share some specific ways we might be able to start that journey of, understanding what's inside and exploring those emotions and working through them. But first, let me ask you this. What about the person out there right now who's listening to us and heard you say 10 years, 30 years, 50 years carrying this around, and they're thinking, I have been carrying this around for 30, 40, 50 years, 10 years, 5 years, whatever it may be. And I feel like it's too much, or it's too late for me, or, I missed my chance because I'm X years old and too late for me. What do you have to say to those people?
But I said at the very beginning that the only time we have is now, whether you're carrying it for 30 years or 10 years or 5 days or from yesterday. Right. The only time that we have is now. And so that if we really begin to say, this is something that I commit to doing because I believe that it will have great value for me, there are many ways that you can do that. And if part of our nature, I think, as human beings, is that we resist pain. We don't want to feel pain. So that we will try to cover it up with play, or we'll try to cover it up with makeup, or we'll try to cover it up in any number of ways. But what I'm saying to you is that internally, you cannot cover it up, and it will have an effect. It will have a depleting effect, a limiting effect, a restrictive effect. And I, as an 80-year-old woman, see that my vitality is very much about the cleansing process that I continue to do. Yes, I started my inner journey when I was 34, but every day I take time to just be with myself. It doesn't have to be for a long time. It doesn't have to be an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. Just for a little time to check in and see, how am I feeling? And is there anything bothering me? Is there anything on my mind that is stressing me? And just to acknowledge that, to acknowledge the feeling, and then to make a decision to let it go until or unless there's something that I can actually do, some function that I can actually do to deal with it. Because if you're not dealing with it and you're just letting it sit there, it's going against you. It's not for you.
Right. Such good advice. So I love this suggestion to take time each day, and this is what you do, to sit and kind of self-reflect and ask yourself, what am I feeling? That's a very simple question. We can all do that. What am I feeling?
What am I feeling?
And then actually let yourself answer honestly. Be willing to feel it. You're right. You're so right. We don't want to feel pain. And so I think a lot of times we don't want to ask that question because we don't want to know what we're feeling. But that's where we get that piling up over time, right?
Yes.
So by doing this each day, a little bit each day, that doesn't feel overwhelming to me. So hopefully everybody listening can think, okay, this is something simple I can do to start. And then you might identify things like you said that you can't let go of, or that you're really struggling with, that you might need extra help with, or extra time. Obviously, some things are bigger than others and harder to work through or to let go. But you won't know that unless you stop and ask the question, what am I feeling?
So the real question is do you want to know?
That is the question. That's a good one.
Do I want to know what I'm feeling? Do I want to know what's going on inside of me? And I totally understand. I've had my times of resistance. I still do. And where we just really don't want to get into stuff. And yet it is that very stuff that, unless we do get into, will have a depleting and limiting effect upon us.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good question. Do I ask everybody out there, ask yourself, do I really want to know what I'm feeling? And if yes, then ask yourself, what am I feeling? And then you can go through what Jane said. And if not, then that's a whole other ball of wax there. So what do we suggest for those who are truthfully answering, I really don't want to know what I'm feeling? What can we tell them?
I would tell them to accept that. Okay, today I don't want to know this.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll ask myself again. I'll give myself another chance. But today I accept that I don't want to know.
I love that. That's great. That's very gentle. Be gentle with yourself. You don't have to want to know right now.
That's right.
And hopefully, eventually you will want to know, and you'll finally realize that there really is a great benefit in letting yourself be open to that.
And you also are respecting your own readiness.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to accept your own readiness, because if you dive into things that you're really not wanting to dive into, you will resist. And when you're finally ready, whether it's the next day, the next week, the next month, or even the next year, you will move through it very quickly because you're ready to and you want to. Yes, and then it's probably more than one thing that you're feeling. And so you could take the easiest one. You don't have to dive into the biggest issue in your life. You can dive into, some conversation you might have had with a neighbor that you found disturbing, and you can release that. But the main thing that I'm saying is that if we're not in a state of release, then we're in a state of accumulation. And every day has filled with it joys, and every day has some stresses or some annoyances or some conflicts or something. And the more, it's like your house. What would happen if you didn't clean your house for 30 years or 20 years or 10 years or a year? Right. How would your house look? How would it feel? Well, that's also, you have an inner home. And it's so, so important to take care of your inner home.
Beautiful. So everybody take care of your inner home. And that includes all you moms out there that are thinking, well, I have X many kids and I don't have any time for this. I mean, how can we encourage moms who feel like, I think that's a big excuse we use. I honestly think it is an excuse because we can all have time or make time, right? But I know it's hard if you have little ones or you have a baby or whatever's going on to feel like, well, yeah, sure, I'll do that when I'm older, but like you say, we only have today. So what do you suggest? I mean, it doesn't have to be an hour of alone time, right?
No, I do it in the shower.
There you go. Okay.
The shower, and I'm in the shower loving the water just streaming down my body or shampooing my hair, and I say, how am I feeling right now?
That's perfect.
And I'll just get an answer, and it may not be able to deal with it right now or want to deal with it, but I will want to know. Wanting to know is the first step. That's great.
And then I also appreciate how you said that you don't have to pick the biggest things. And I've been reading this fabulous book, Letting Go, by David Hawkins, and he talks about the pieces that you can let go. So if you lost your job, instead of having to let go of the the fact that you don't have that job anymore and everything that goes with it, there are pieces. You're going to miss the lunch with your friends, and that's maybe something that's not as sad for you as the actual job that you don't have or the income that you don't have. So you can sort of accept and work on letting go of that piece, but you don't have to let go of everything all at once.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're really talking about letting go, but in order to let go, we need to listen. And so the second thing that I would say is really important is the whole idea of listening to ourselves, listening inside of ourselves. And everything that I'm saying about myself with myself, I could also say with myself and my children as I raise them. I need to let go of my feelings that are not serving me. I also need to let go of my children gradually, because as they grow, they need to have more space to look into their own activities, what they want, to their own feelings, to their own preferences, to their own desires. So as we learn to let go within ourselves, we also learn to let go with our children. And we also listen to ourselves, and we begin to listen to our children more. And as we listen to our children more, we can follow their lead of their interests and follow the lead of their talents and follow them, so that they can become who they are really meant to be.
Right.
So what we need to do with ourselves, we can also do as mothers with our children.
That's wonderful, because when we start to practice that, asking those questions and then listening, I think you're right. We can ask, but if we don't listen, what does it matter, right? Then we're more in that state of wanting to ask and listen to our children and to other people around us too. It's kind of a practice too.
Yes.
And, I wanted to ask you, backing up just a tiny, accepting. And, this is a topic that I've written about a little bit and talk about a lot, because I feel like it is so key to accept where we are, accept what's happening, accept ourselves. But it seems so hard for everybody. Do you have any suggestions on how can we accept that I don't feel like I want to feel today, or I don't, accept that this thing is happening in my life that I don't want to be happening, or even accept parts of ourselves that we don't want to be there?
Well, it's a lot about our self-talk. How do we talk to ourselves? And so many of us are so critical of ourselves and so disapproving of ourselves. And that kind of self-disapproval also goes out to our children and other people, so that we can begin to look at our self-talk, whether it's about our bodies. When we look in the mirror, what do we say? Do we see our beauty, or do we see our flaws? When we look at our bodies, do we accept the magnificence of how they operate, or do we pick out one place that we don't like? So our self-talk, we can begin to look at our habits. And as we look at our habits, we can begin to question them and challenge them and then change them. So like I have a practice where I get up in the morning, and when I go to the mirror, I'm purposely, intentionally just smile and say good morning. And it isn't something that I always feel like doing, but I do it because it's my way of remembering how important it is to honor myself and accept myself exactly as I am, hair tousle, no makeup, just as I am, with a smile.
Oh, and that's so simple. Again, it's so simple, but that could be so powerful, right? We probably don't do that. I'm sure none of us do that enough. It's a great suggestion. So, okay, so you mentioned your first thing and second thing. Was there anything else you wanted to add to what we've already been talking about before we kind of move on to maybe some advice that you might have about things that you wish you would have known in your 30s?
Well, what I would like to say is, in addition to letting go and listening, that there are two other things that I think are really important in every day.
Okay, great.
Okay, and one of them is the idea of pleasure. Pleasure is so key in life, and we tend to be very much about working and doing and getting things done and putting things in order and cleaning and accomplishing. And what I say is that the most important thing that you can do every day is to give yourself some pleasure. whether it's taking time to call a friend and just have a moment of connection, whether it's listening to music, whether it's walking in nature, whatever is your idea of pleasure, even for a few minutes, to get into that habit of pleasure is so key to a happy life, and to incorporating into your day a balance of things that you really look forward to and things that you know that you need to do that you may not be so thrilled about doing.
Well, that's a great idea, because when you put in the pleasurable things throughout the day, then you can create more of that joy in your life, right? Even if you have a lot of things you have to do that you might not feel like doing or want to do, right? Those responsibilities. And I think moms are particularly in of this, and I think we prevent it so much from ourselves. We think, I can't do that. That's selfish. And that goes back to your title of soul selfish. Explain how you came up with that, and what does that mean?
Well, it came to me in meditation, and it was so shocking to me because it's so conflicting. When I think of selfish, I think of actually ego selfishness, which is that I want something, and whether it's at your expense or not, I'm going to go for it. That's the most common definition of selfish. But on a soul level, we're all connected. So if I'm connected to my soul and coming to you from an action that's coming from my soul, and it's always intended from goodness in your soul, then it's intended to be good for you. So when it came to me to write this book, which was something I resisted for years, I will add, and when I finally sat down to write it, and I just loved it from the very moment I started to write, and for 2.25 years I just wrote until it was done. It was amazing, healing and interesting and deepening and pleasurable. And but my intention was that whatever I learned might be helpful to you. So on a soul level, what's good for me is good for you. And so that's what soul selfish means. And it really is another name for self-love.
Oh, beautiful. So everybody listening, you're hearing it. The definition of traditional, the egocentric selfish, that's never what we're talking about when we're talking about self-care on here. A lot of people confuse that with being, quote, selfish in the egocentric way. But this idea of redefining selfish with a soul selfishness and expanding your soul, connecting with other people, finding that joy in life. Really, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes. And it starts, you are your first relationship, and people don't understand that. The relationship you have to yourself is what you send out into your relationships. So the more self-loving you are, the more other-loving you are. The more generous you are with yourself, the more acknowledging you are with yourself, the more happy you are with yourself, you're going to send out to other people.
Right.
So that your goodness is good for the world.
Yeah, and as a mother, it's so good for your family too, really.
I mean, cranky mothers don't create happiness in the family situation.
That's right.
They create cranky children. So we need to see that to care for ourselves and to give ourselves what we need, which is sometimes so that we have a barometer of where we are, and we have a compass of how we want to be and where we want to go and what we want to do, can only benefit those, our children, and any people that we are in touch with. Because on a soul level, we are all connected.
And you're so right. I mean, I think we strive to talk about that a lot here on the show, that if we don't, that's why we talk about personal growth and motherhood, because I think it's a particularly vulnerable time for us to just shelve it and think that it's not important, and to not take care of ourselves and to not practice soul selfishness. But you're making a great case, and I hope everybody out there is feeling inspired to take some of these suggestions that we're talking about and get started today. And you've given really practical suggestions, to ask those questions, to listen, and to put pleasure in your life, and that this is a good thing because we're being soul selfish and not egocentrically selfish. And what was the fourth thing that you were wanting to add to that? You said there were two other things after pleasure.
And presence.
Presence, okay.
Present to ourselves.
Okay.
if we are like in a fog or so busy, focused outside of what we have to do or where we have to be, and we're not even aware of the energy that we're coming from, whether it's so rapid, usually we're in a hurry and we have no idea of how people are receiving us because we are not receiving ourselves. And especially little children who are so sensitive, when a mother is so engaged in getting this done and getting that done, it bother me kind of feeling. And I understand that. I've been there.
Right.
That's not optimum for ourselves. And again, from a soul level, it's not optimum for our children.
Right.
So we really need to look, not criticize ourselves, but to see when we're doing that and make an adjustment. Become aware and make an adjustment. Become aware and make an adjustment. And the more aware we are, the more we will naturally make those adjustments. While we're in such a hurry and such a flurry, there is no space for awareness.
Right. Very true. Presence, so important. And it's funny because I think, we've gotten really deep into this topic. I think a lot of people probably hear we're talking about, age is just a number, and that we're going to talk about, something a little more surface. But here we are talking about really deep things, because what I'm hearing you say is, like you say, when we carry that baggage around for years, that's what makes us slow down. That's what makes us feel unhappy. That's what makes us feel older, feel like we can't create the life we desire. But it really starts with uncovering that, going deep into that grayness that you described at the beginning, finding the cracks and pulling the pieces apart in order to then, like you say, expose the light that's inside of us and use that then to create that life that we desire. Does that sound about right?
You got it.
It's great advice. I love it. So
now do it.
Now do it. So she's given several specific things that everybody can start with today. But in our last, little bit of time, we have a little bit more time, but I wanted to get some of your wisdom from, things you wish you would have known when you were younger, when you were in your 30s, or when you were in the age or the phase where some of our listeners might be. I mean, you're a mother, you're a grandmother, right? So as you've already mentioned, you can relate to a lot of what everybody's going through right now. So what are some things you wish you would have known when you were younger that you know now?
First thing that I wish I would have known was that I am my first relationship and that I need to take care of myself first.
Yes.
And I grew up as a, quote, good girl, which meant that I was there to give to everyone. Mm-hmm. And it was really giving to everyone with an unconscious motive to be loved. Mm-hmm. And so the more that we can know that we are our own first relationship and that to love ourselves is a gift to every other relationship we have. I wish that I had known that. It would have changed my life.
Well, that's so important for everybody listening too. The sooner we learn that, the better. But again, no matter where you are in your life, starting today to really get what Jane's saying here is that's the important thing. And I think we neglect that relationship. We forget that we even have a relationship with ourselves. And the sooner that we can prioritize that relationship, the better for everybody.
Yes, the better our relationships and the better for every person we relate to.
Yes, so important.
Right. And it also is the source of our creative energy, because if we're not doing that, we lose energy. And what happened in my instance as a good girl, and I'm stressing this because I think there are millions of good girls in this world.
Yes.
That basically as women trained to be good girls, where we give and we take care of our families and we take care of our homes, and now we take care of our professional lives and we take care of our elderly parents and we take care of our communities. And by the time we're finished, we are so depleted that we have nothing left for our own creative talents beyond that. And that's very, very sad. So I wish I knew when I was 20 that life, just like breath, is about inhaling and exhaling, that life wasn't about just giving or exhaling, that it also has the balance of inhaling, and to want to give and to receive and to create relationships that give and receive, and that for myself I give and receive is something that I wish that I had known much earlier in my life.
You're right. This is such an important point for everybody listening. I know I can relate to this personally. I know everybody listening probably can. But I'm thinking, just at different times of my life, I get these reminders that I need to take better care of myself, or I'm not giving enough time to my creative pursuits, or I'm saying yes to everybody when really I should be saying no to some things. And again, I love that you put it in that phrase of being the good girl, because I think so many of us feel that way. And then you get to the point where you have this wake-up call, like I've had several, through deaths of a loved one, and most recently through falling and getting a concussion where I literally couldn't do anything, and I was in bed for a couple months, and I've had to kind of come back from that. But I feel like the question is, and here's me being a little soul selfish right now because I want to know what you have to say on this, is for those of us who might know, we need to take better care of ourselves. We know we need that time and emphasis on that relationship with ourselves. But a lot of us, I think, sometimes feel like we don't know where to start. We don't know where to start. And you gave some great ideas about asking how I feel. That's kind of getting in touch with our feelings. But do you have any suggestions for those who are sitting there thinking, I know I need to do this better, but I just don't know where to begin. I don't even know what pleasure means to me anymore. I'm just so used to just doing what I have to do. I don't even know how to have fun anymore. Or I'm not sure where to begin. What do you think?
Well, what comes to my mind is I remember when I started my family counseling practice, that whenever a client called and said they wanted to have a session at a given time and I were available, I would give them the session at the given time. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, I got really busy and there was no time for Jane.
Yeah.
And so I finally got to the point where I said, okay, from 2 weeks from now, when I have a free schedule, I haven't yet committed, I'm going to X out times for Jane. Mm-hmm. And then arrange my schedule around Jane's free time rather than fitting Jane's free time into everyone else's schedule.
Right.
And that was like a very symbolic move that I did that really changed my life, that I could prioritize myself in some small way where that was inviolable, that was just mine. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I could fill myself and then feed others, mm-hmm. but that I have to receive in order to keep giving. Otherwise, I become a dry cell battery that doesn't have a recharger.
Yes, very good. I love that because I think so many of us do fit it, especially as moms, fit ourselves. I say that all the time. I feel like I'm just fitting myself into the cracks of my family. Whatever time they leave me, I'll take it, right? But This is being proactive.
This is being for yourself. And right. if you accept that you are your first relationship, it will be good for all of them. It will be good.
That is such an important point. I want to emphasize that one again. I'm really having the aha moment finally, because I was agreeing with you, but now I'm really getting it. If you're right, if my relationship with myself is the first and most important relationship, and I agree that it is, because if I'm not well, I can't do anything else for anybody. I can't have healthy relationships in other ways. That should be the core of what really drives us. So if we can really get that down deep inside, then hopefully we can let go of all the excuses and all the reasons why we could never put ourselves on our calendar first. And instead, just go for it and take your suggestion, right?
Well, it really works. I mean, it's a way of taking a stand, of putting a line in the sand and saying, this is my time. I stand for myself. Mm. And when I am replenished, I will have more energy, more vitality, more love, more patience, more willingness to give, and to give from a quality that's very different from a depleted giving.
Mm. Right.
So it's really about quality of life. So yes, we may have our schedules now where we have everyone else first and we do everything for everyone. But the quality from which we come to do that is very different from when we have a sense of being filled and overflowing to do those things rather than depleted in doing those things.
And that's so perfect for the moms to hear, because we are often just depleted and we're just giving, quote unquote, but you're not truly giving from, like you say, from that from, you're not really giving from your soul when you're doing that. You're just sort of in automation mode. You're just taking care of what has to happen, but you're not giving of yourself and feeling that joy come back to you because you're doing it from a different place, right? When you're depleted.
Right. And that's not going to go away in a week. Yeah. But as you take steps to do this, you will see that more and more of the time, as you feel full, that you're going to be giving from your fullness rather than from your depletion. Right. And it's not a one big jump to the next, but it's a gradual stepping.
Yes. And again, at every age of life, we can do this. It's not just for a certain time. Right. And I love that. And I love that you said that you started your whole inner awakening process in your 30s. So it's not like, because I think a lot of people might think, well, sure, when I'm older and my kids have grown and I have more time, it's a time thing. But it's really not a time thing. It's a prioritizing that relationship thing.
It's a choice thing. And yes, I was 34 years old. And from the moment I started it, I knew this is what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And to this day, 46 years later, mm-hmm. I can see that the quality of my life is very, very different from many of my peers. Very, very different. Mm-hmm. And I attribute it to connection that I have inside that guides me, mm-hmm. that tells me when I'm depleted, that tells me when I'm full, that tells me when I'm doing things that make me happy, that tells me when I'm not so thrilled about this, yes. or being here or there. And that guides me on how to live my life happily. And I think we're all here to live happy lives, contributing happy lives. Right. And if we don't have a connection to the source that gives us that information, because it's so clouded over, then we are lost. Right. On some level, our guidance is lost.
Absolutely. This is so important. Okay, I can't believe our time is almost up, but I wanted to give you a chance to share just a couple more thoughts on things that you wish you knew when you were younger. I'm sure you shared a ton today, but if there's any other piece of advice you'd want to leave us with before we begin to wrap up, I'd love to hear it.
I wish I had discovered my talents earlier.
Oh.
I would have had more time to play with them and enjoy them and contribute with them.
Yeah. And what do you suggest for people who are thinking, I don't know what my talents are? Any thoughts on how to begin that process of figuring it out if you're not sure?
Well, it all starts in how much time and space you're willing to give attention to yourself, mm-hmm. and how much you're willing to receive. You see, I believe that the more we're willing to receive from others, open to receiving, asking to receive from others, the more help we get, the less stressed we are, and the more ability we have to look inside and discover, well, what are my interests and talents? What are my yearnings? What are my longings? What do I really want to know about? What do I want to experiment with? But if we're so busy, and we don't ask for help, and we're angry that we don't have the help that we want to have, and we don't know how to ask for it. So receiving is a very, very big part of leading a balanced life, just like inhaling is a very big part of breathing.
Yes, it is. I love that. I've always said the same thing, that it's just as important to receive love as it is to give, and to receive help. It's so important. And you also give those people an opportunity to serve and love too, that you prevent if you don't let that in, right? So it helps everyone.
One of the sweetest things that I have with my husband is that when I tell him that I appreciate what he gives me, that I could just see him just so happy that he has contributed and that it has been acknowledged.
Oh, everybody loves that. Everybody wants to be acknowledged, right? I mean, it really does help to be able to acknowledge people and ourselves. So that's great. So, okay, one last piece of advice for us before we wrap up?
Well, the biggest thing that I can say is to know that knowing yourself is going to make your life so, so much happier and so much more at one and in tune with yourself than any other thing you could ever do. So my biggest request is think about life is an inside-out process. It doesn't start out there. It starts in here. And the more that you pay attention inside, I believe the greater your life is going to be.
Beautiful. Life is an inside-out process, and that's exactly what we've been talking about today here with Jane Weicker. Jane, thank you for not only giving us the big picture of some ideas for how we can be more soul selfish and also, have the life we desire at every age. And I love that you said at every age and not just at any age, because that implies that we can continue to recreate ourselves, right?
Yay.
And hopefully we will. Hopefully everybody will. So thank you so much for being here again, everybody. Her book, Jane's book, is called Soul Selfish, The Awakening of a Good Girl. And again, if you're one of those good girls that Jane talked about, which I know I am, I'm going to have to get her book for sure. Go check out her book and all these wonderful things she talked about. You can learn more about that through her book and also through her website and blog, which is at JaneWyker, WYKER.com. And Jane, thanks again.
Thank you, Christine. It's been my pleasure to be with you.
My pleasure too. And for all of you listening, thank you for joining us each week here on Motherhood to grow through motherhood instead of just going through it, because we all know it's a lot better to grow through it and to do it together as we do each week here on Motherhood Radio. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.